Hello and welcome to the MSU Wealth Management Association podcast. This summer, we are excited to bring back some of our favorite episodes every Monday. We hope you are having an amazing summer and expect new interviews for our next season, Season 9, in September as the school year begins. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Justin Jackson here. Today, I had the amazing opportunity to speak to Douglas A. Boneparth. He's an author, financial advisor, and president of his own firm in New York City, Fide Wealth. He's been featured on many news outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, ABC, CNBC, the New York Times, and much, much more. Before our conversation, I took the time to read his book, The Millennial Money Fix. As a financial planning nerd, I have read a lot of personal finance books over the years, and his book really is the best at breaking down the unique set of issues facing millennials today. So I highly recommend checking out his book. This is a great episode for college kids quickly approaching full-time work. Douglas began his career in New York City during the economic crash in 2008 and 2009. As we enter the workforce during the COVID-19 era, there are a lot of lessons to be learned from the people who survived and thrived through those times. Douglas is very entertaining, so I highly recommend following him on Twitter at Doug Boneparth. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. I would love to start out talking about your story. Let's start in college. Can you tell us the tale of your journey from 19 years old, entering the industry, becoming a financial advisor, all the way to owning your own firm in New York City right now?
Yes, thank you for making me feel very old, because that spans so many years at this particular point in time. But I'm happy to share that with you. So one of the things that, I don't take for granted, and kind of is always been a competitive advantage for me, is that I had the luxury of growing up in the financial planning profession. I got to watch my father in 1991 join IDS American Express, which flash forward, you get to Ameriprise Financial along the way. But I saw him kind of at the beginning when financial planning was becoming something, right? Again, super early 90s, where still predominantly selling stuff, brokerage, type business, the transaction, not the relationship. But I got to see him break out into this fairly new space pretty much my entire life. And as much as I was getting, paid allowance to file papers in his office as a child, that wasn't really the time in which I ever thought that this would be a career for me. You got to go to freshman year of college, or after my freshman year of college, when I was having a ton of fun. And I think my dad was getting a little nervous with how much fun I was actually having. Didn't, ask me what I was doing the summer after my freshman year. And I said, I think I'm just going to stick at school and get some credits done. Who would want to leave, was my thinking. He says, I'll tell you what, why don't you go for the second half of summer, and in the first half, maybe learn a thing or two about financial planning, maybe take a license. And sure enough, when I came home, there was a Series 7 manual on my bed. And he says, see if you can get this done over the next month and a half, 2 months. And that was the task. So not really knowing how this would unfold, I was given an opportunity to walk through that door and at least get a credential and a license under my belt. And I did. And before I went back later that summer, I had passed the series, barely passed my general securities license, which I no longer have as a fee-only advisor now, which is interesting. But that's where it started. It started with an opportunity, I think due to my father's own fear that I was just going to be some raging party animal my whole time in college. He maybe was half right on that one, but that was kind of the start, of the whole thing. And then throughout all of college, I would work in his practice and really just touch everything from back office, mail logs, creating financial plans, doing transactions, getting to sit in client meetings. I got to touch it all. And I think because of that, I was able to tool up real fast at a young age, which we can get into a moment. But that's the flashback to 16, 17 years ago when I first got my foot into the door. And by the following summer, I would finish the 66 and the insurance. I was fully licensed going into my junior year. And at that point, I could really do, I could do a lot, for the practice in college. So the learning and the hands-on only, it kind of went parabolic by the end of college.
Do you feel that university prepared you for the job at all, or was it mostly the learning that you did on the job?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you're going to learn things in school that will help you on this particular career path, but it is completely lopsided what I learned in practice versus classroom. Ironically, from a, by the way, from a business and finance perspective, and I was not a business or finance major. I was for a hot second in the beginning. I think that was kind of like my dad's concern there too, is I wasn't really quite sticking it out there in the business school. I would pivot to becoming a public relations major in the journalism school, mainly because my now wife and college girlfriend was a pure journalism major, and I just figured it'd be closer to her if I picked that up as a major. How naive and foolish of me. Ironically, almost or excuse me, a lot of what I learned in communication school and public relations actually paired very nice with a career in personal finance. And the parallel here is public relations trying to establish that long-term relationship, whether that's your stakeholders, customers, the people you're working for, however you want to phrase that. And I would argue that we're doing a lot of the same stuff here in having financial planning relationships and working with people on their personal finances. So learning academically, and by the way, that dovetails nicely into marketing and advertising, getting messaging, not just to your clients correctly, but to the public. A lot of, and we'll get to this, I hope, is a lot of my growth strategy has been a really high PR marketing, mainstream media influence and campaign. And I've been successful at doing that. And I would thank my education in public relations for that. Ironically, not, an econ class or an accounting class. I'd go to business school, later on. And I'll get to that, and we can get to that too, as far as, is an MBA worth it and stuff like that. But yeah, no, communications and public relations, something that doesn't normally stick in your head as like, this will help me in a career in personal finance, was super, super beneficial. But digressing back to like what actually helped me do the job itself, the hands-on learning, being able to like write financial plans and do transactions and see how the business is run.
Yeah. So what did the first few years out of college look like? Did you immediately start applying these PR skills, or was that kind of just a nugget in the back of the head those first couple of years?
Yeah, I don't think the PR flower would bloom until like I really found myself needing to grow myself, right? So after college, it was a quick trip down the Florida Turnpike from Gainesville to my hometown of Boca Raton and back and forth, kind of working in the family practice, in my father's practice, and just continuing to get experience. I was also studying for my CFP. So my last 3 credits of my undergraduate degree were the first module for the CFP. I walked into the dean's office and I said, "Can you sign off on giving me actual accreditation for this class?" He's like, "What is this?" He's like, "That's groovy, man. Here you go." He like signed off on it, and he was a really cool guy. And he got it. He knew this was for my future. And I graduated. It's kind of cool story that my last 3 credits were the first module of the CFP. So I was at home studying CFP day to day. It kind of sucked. Part of the story is to know just how kind of life, at 24, 25 is pretty. I think 23, 24 is pretty confusing. You just graduated college. The love of your life is up in New York, going to law school. You're working, for your father, and at the end of the day, you got to go home. Your room in your house is not quite, what you maybe envisioned doing, but it's a critical part of the story in that ultimately it soured and became toxic. Like that was not sustainable, despite the opportunity of working with your father and learning as much as I did in a short period of time. Back to relationships. What was that doing to a father and a son? And I eventually just stopped going downstairs to the dinner table to eat with my family. Like I'd take my food up to my room, study CFP, play Gears of War, and go to bed pretty miserable. missing my girlfriend. I didn't even know where my friends were at that. I'm in my hometown.
Right.
We're all just kind of completely lost in life, trying to get some respect from someone, and no one's really offering it at that point in time. So the question really was PR helping me then. No, I was still, and I think this is the point for young advice, like the amount of learning that you need, like you're in this position where you're amassing as much knowledge and skills
Right.
as you can. And I want people to be very open-minded about the fact that, you're like whether I was 19, 24, 25, 27, 28, like you're really, really young. And this isn't an industry or a profession where you're slinging products. It's where you're establishing relationships. And this whole mantra, I think, from the old school is follow the money, gather assets. And you're talking about people in their 50s, 60s, 70s. You're in your 20s.
Right.
Like, give me a break. And we'll get to why, that problem, that fundamental issue right there is what ultimately helped me figure out that I'll start Bonafide Wealth and cater to millennials. But yeah, coming home at 23, like, as much as my father would want me to go out and I did, I went to the Chamber of Commerce and did networking events and did leadership positions like I had always done, along the way. That is something just, was always celebrated or encouraged is to do these types of things. Yeah, I was getting my name out there, like, but that was just because I'm extroverted and I draw my energy from crowds, and I wanted to go to these networking events, and I thought, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. I don't know how much my degrees or education really helped with that as much as it was my personality. But looking back at it, like there's no surprise I was able to maybe I got a handful of clients in my time in my super young 20s down in Florida. And I just hate it when young advisors or planners are put in a position where they feel like they have to do this, or something's wrong with them for not raising 10 million in 2 years.
Yeah.
Like get out of here. Like that's not happening unless you have a deep bench and network. So
in those first few years for the young advisors, and pretty much my whole class, we're going to be entering that very quickly. How do you manage those stressful years? Like, those are pivotal years in your personal life. You're figuring out your own brain. Like, your brain doesn't even stop growing until like 25 or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you manage that stress in those opening couple of years? I mean, even if it's inside of work, outside of work, like what were those things that helped you get through those, pivotal years?
Yeah, I think you need to be self-aware. I wish someone had told me, maybe this is one of the pitfalls of working, in a family practice and believing that, like, look, things are easier for you, right? If you're going to play that game long term, your father's expectation or your parents' expectation is you'll take over the practice someday, and there's at least a space of clients that you'll be able to work with and plug your people into. That is, and for anyone in that position, hats off. I mean, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, especially when the parent-child relationship's working out. But I wish someone had told me. Imagine that wasn't the case. I think that distorted what it was. But nonetheless, I wish someone would have told me, and I guess what I would advise anyone starting out here is have some self-awareness and remind yourself constantly that you're playing the long game, like a really long game. And that's not for everyone. Like I'm a very impatient person. I think I got extremely lucky with I think I tried to bail a number of times, and I was just not getting any jobs I applied for at the private banks. I think everyone just kept telling me no, especially when I got to New York and I thought I had a pivot and what I was currently doing wasn't going to be it. I wish someone told me that if I'm truly going to be this advisor or start my own practice or, build this book or whatever you want to call it, I wish someone told me I'm going to be playing a very long game, and it's really about creating as much runway for myself as possible. I think the game most of you need to be playing is how am I going to survive over the next 5+ years, right?
Yeah, I mean, what would be your advice for somebody who's, even entering a new town, new market, no connections and stuff like that? Like, how do you build that runway for yourself?
I think it really depends on who's picking you up to be an advisor. And this runs the gamut. I mean, if you're going to work for, your mutual company or insurance company that's kind of posing, as a financial planning firm, and look, they might have CFPs, they might, have a decent RIA built into them. Traditionally, no, you're going to sell insurance products. And if you don't, and if you can't sell enough products in X amount of time and meet your sales goal, See you later. And I think a lot, the majority of people are going to gravitate there, and that's not a bad thing. It's just an eyes wide open thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not fond of that recruitment model at all. I think it's archaic. I don't think it works long term. That doesn't mean you can't use it to your advantage. And I think that's the difference. I mean, nobody in the HR department at those businesses wants to hear me say that, but it's the truth. Too bad. Deal with that.
Yeah.
So if you're going there and it is raise 10 million in 2 years, or get, your aunt and your uncle and your family in the door, and sell someone a VUL, it's like, ew. But, if that's the name of the game, understand they're giving you a certain amount of runway and a certain amount of time to exist and get licensed and get educated. And that's just on the job, right? And then outside of that, I think you need to recognize there's almost an unlimited amount of things you can do to enhance either your attractability when it comes to going for the RIAs and the more boutique places, or whoever gets it, right?
Yeah.
Like, there are far fewer firms that are like, we know we have to build you up over 5, 6, 7 years, and we're not going to put much sales pressure, if any sales pressure, on you. We're going to teach you the business. We're going to put you in a team. And then we're going to, give you access to clients. That's the vast minority.
Yeah, there's not a ton of those opportunities. Yeah. So, I mean, it's great when advisors say, like, you should get a gig like that, but it's like, those gigs there's not that many of those out there.
Yeah, they're not. And so, like, unless you're top of the class or the belle of the ball, unless you're first round draft pick here, you're not necessarily walking up to, the best independent RIA out there that has, the bomb training program and is, posting, super high percent of recruits that become amazingly successful financial advisors. Most are going, to your Northwestern Mutuals of the world to get that first shot there. And again, I think it's just important to know that you are in charge of creating your own pathway and destiny here. If you're playing a long game, the inherent difficulty is, how do I create, 5, 6, 7, however many years of runway, when I'm only going to survive maybe 1 or 2 years at the, at the firms that are very sales culture oriented. That's a tricky game to navigate and play. You can get in your head very easily. You can fall out of love with it extremely easily. I mean, all it takes is one bad sales manager to, forever have you look at the profession as, disgusting, and why'd you ever, want to do that? I think it's super unfortunate when those things happen. But if you can know from the jump that you are going to literally weave together a pathway for yourself, right? I think you'll be better prepared to handle some of the inherent volatility that's going to come your way when, you're told, hey, you didn't open X amount account. That's cool. Thank you, firm XYZ. I'm going to now go over to firm ABC, because all the while, and I think here's the bigger point, all the while, what's that, 9 to 6, 8 to 6, whatever it is, all the while, you are working on so many other areas that's going to make you a great advisor. You're studying your CFP. You're thinking about, the content you want to create, whether that's your blog, a video, whatever it is, whatever creative outlet, like, so that touches on, like, how are you going to market yourself?
Yeah.
Look, whether or not you need to be getting clients up front, we should be trying and should be thinking with the kind of end in mind that, you're going to be responsible, assuming you want to be an advisor that's, developing a business developing advisor. And there are plenty of advisors who don't develop.
Don't do that.
You can be, a practitioner more or less, but should always be thinking about how you're going to do that. How are you going to brand yourself? What makes you unique? You should be networking, expanding your base. Your network base. So going out to places that preferably coincide with what you like to do, love to do, and attract the people in the same areas. There is thousands upon thousands of hours that you could dedicate to supplementing just what you're learning inside of it. I mean, half the reason you're going to those firms is because they got a paycheck for you, and you got to pay rent. You still got to pay rent. And by the way, if you, there's no, and I think this is a very, no one wants to hear this one, but going to a big city or an expensive city, to struggle, financially because your draw is, what about just substituting that for going back home, spending a year or two, if your parents are willing to let you live rent free? I mean, I think that's the best play overall. is not going to a market outside of where rent is the cheapest, right? Stacking as much cash as humanly possible while you're getting paid, to train up, going home at, go get a beer with your friends on the weekends, but then spend pretty much all of your other time trying to become the best advisor you can be. Because if your goal is to get to those RIAs and those firms that are the, shining stars, and your future looks super bright by getting in there, what are you doing to put yourself at the top of the list when you approach them and say, look, I spent the last 2 years working at firm ABC, but I've built this. I know this. I got my CFP. Make it so they have to invest as little of their money in you as possible. So it's such a no-brainer to get you in their firm. That's how you do it. Like, truly, that's how you do it. And I don't want to really hear from too many, 23, 24-year-olds with, historically will have the least amount of responsibilities in their life that they can't. If you really want to become an advisor and crush it, like, you can't sacrifice 12 to 24 months of your life.
2 years of that. Yeah, that makes sense. And it is a long-term investment. And I think, like, a career in advising, part of the reason why people want it is because it's so fruitful down the road. But it takes a lot of vision, I think, for a 23-year-old to say, oh yeah, this is the commitment I want to make.
Yeah, Gary Vee says it like all the time, when he's like seeing people. If anyone's into that, he's like, how old are you? And they're like, I'm 22. And he's like, you're a puppy. Like, again, like, it's almost getting like, ew, I sound like an old guy when you hear people say that kind of stuff. But the reality, but that's the truth, right? Typically you're not in that kind of frame of mind at that point. You're just coming out of college, the world, now you're out there in the real world. But that's the ticket. That's the real ticket. And you touched on something extremely important, which is just how fruitful this business can be. Not to brag here, I'm 36. I control my schedule. I get to be with my 2 daughters whenever I want. I probably have the best life-work balance. It's unfair. Like, it's really unfair. And I think a lot of people, I think a lot of young advisors or folks who want to come in the industry see that prize of, like, I can really have an amazing life, make amazing money, however you want to define that. And truthfully, sky's the limit on the money side. Go scale yourself a multi-billion-dollar firm. You're making more money than you'll ever need, 10 times over. But between the money, the balance, the flexibility, building an asset and a business, contacts, you name it, it's the sweetest thing around. Guess what it takes to get there? Did you really think it's going to just happen? Of course not. It's going to take an insane amount of hard work. What, just because you graduated from college and got a college degree? Like, come on, you got to really apply yourself. And you got to really want it. Otherwise, it's never going to happen for yourself. You're never going to get to that reward. People look at me as, look, so young, like, he worked in his dad's business. Yeah, that was a short period of time. And while it opened the door, like, I left that and had to build this thing brick by brick in New York, do the opposite of what I did. And I went to New York City because I felt that I could afford, I took what he gave me and I learned and went to another advisor and said, look at this value proposition I can put before you. Here's the kind of salary that I want to command. So I can pay my bills and have a beer on the weekends in Manhattan. And I'll try my best. And I knew I had to start building a book along the side of that and ultimately replace that salary one day. That's a lot of, there's nothing backstopping me. I came up to New York City in debt, right? From college and from having to get rid of my car. Almost like cliche, like, I'm going to go to New York City and make my dreams come true. I was able to do that because I had 3.5, 4 years of experience that virtually no one else had. And, it's not like, meanwhile, Ivy League grads were, going to work for big banks to make $110,000 a year. I was making half that, after 3.5 years of working in personal finance, still knowing that, there'll be a point where, I can go flex on all my investment banker friends and all my private equity friends, somewhere down the road. And still, still trying to make that happen. But, I'm not in the office 90 hours a week, so the flexing's still there, or at least you get to earn it after a really, really long period of time.
You get a flex by knowing your children. So that's
yeah, exactly. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. So when it comes to introverts and extroverts. I think this is a tough business for people who are scared of, I guess, social conflict, social discomfort.
Yeah.
Do you think this is a business that introverts can succeed in?
Are you reading my blogs? Did you dig that up? No.
Yeah, I've been doing some research.
Yeah. Good job. Like, sounds very familiar. But I love that you're talking about this one.
Yeah.
The takeaway on that is there's a financial advisor for everyone. A colleague of mine, still a good friend to this day, was a gentleman that, if I was 24, he had to have been like 33 or 30. I think it was 10 years older than me, somewhere around there. And he isn't the most extroverted person in the world. I would think he's quite introverted. And I realized just he's a great advisor. Like, his clients love him. Like, when he's doing his thing with his clients, he's obviously a very analytical guy. He picks up very analytical clients. Wait, let me back up on that. Okay, you're an introverted financial advisor. You don't think introverts need financial planning and services too? Like,
Yeah.
Again, there is an advisor for everyone. So you don't draw your energy. Your marketing won't be around, hosting big events or filling big rooms. Just because you're an introvert doesn't mean, you give up on, putting yourself out there in a way that works for you or that's comfortable for you. I don't like the whole introvert versus extrovert thing because I know introverts can do it. Now, will they have as easy of a time going down the traditional paths of client acquisition and business development? Probably not.
Yeah.
But to fully, paint with a broad brush and say like, oh, they definitely don't have a shot here. That's just not true. I know a lot of great, amazing advisors, way more successful than me, who absolutely kill it, and they're not putting on a show. They're not the center of attention.
So what about extroverted advisors who do want to pursue the PR path, do want to be polished public speakers? Like, business school hasn't prepared me to speak on camera or into a microphone. I'll tell you
Right.
that. And so it's like, how do you sharpen those skills, before you make it on the TV, before you get good interview opportunities?
So there's two pieces of that. There's one, obviously, what's instinctual. Like, some people are just great behind a camera or a microphone, and I absolutely love camera work and mic work. That's why I get to do it. So there's, whether that's talent or just passion for it, or just a desire to do it. Okay, so what if you don't have that? And especially if you do have that, it doesn't matter if you do or don't have it. You got to practice.
Oh yeah.
Nothing will replace that. Like,
being outgoing doesn't prevent you from bombing an interview or you won't give a good keynote just because you're excited about it,
I've been on national TV, CNBC, Fox, you name it. I've been on it. And, it's funny when you're first doing it, you're getting so nervous when you're doing recorded content. Like, you can have unlimited takes. Like, it doesn't matter if you mess up. Like, you literally, so just real quick down. So like, you can gauge how good you've gotten at this based on how you feel during recorded stuff. Like, even what we're doing here today. Like, if I say something really stupid right now, whatever, I'll say, hey, cut, Justin, please cut that out. That's not something you can do when 2 million people are watching CNBC,
right?
And you're being asked a direct question and you're live on air. So my point is this: it just takes practice. If you don't get butterflies in your stomach for the big stuff, something's wrong. You're probably dead. Like, you need that. And I always joked with myself that, you've reached a point of being pretty good at it when you're about to go on air or do something live, and that feeling shows up, that butterfly in your stomach, sick, I'm going to throw up on myself feeling. When you say, oh, hey friend, there you are. Like, expecting it, knowing it's there, saying hi to it, acknowledging it, and then just blowing right through it and, laying down your track. That is kind of an aha moment for anyone doing this kind of stuff. I, even with my big personality, would not have been able to get there if it wasn't for countless numbers of podcasts, digital content, live content, creating my own stuff. Go get your camera, put it on a tripod, and go start making videos of yourself. it will feel awful. Like it will feel so disgusting if you don't do it. Like, oh, I skipped this. I mean, geez, even to this day, like if I set up a tripod and it's just me and I'm trying to make like a piece of video content, like you'll never know I did 50 takes.
Yeah.
You'll never know. But you got to do it. You kind of got to just push through a lot of these things. It's practice in any situation. Yeah, of course. If if you know how to smile in a camera and really like put on that show. So if, like you did theater as a kid, or those things are really going to help you a lot.
Yeah, I did 3 productions of the Nutcracker Ballet when I was a little kid. That's a little secret that I have,
There.
but it's empowered me so much in job
cat's
interviews.
Cat's out of the bag now. Yeah, my role as Peter Rabbit in kindergarten. That's where it started, I think. Oh, I was also Tom Turkey. I got both leads.
Oh, nice.
In the holiday shows for kindergarten. I guess that's where I developed the knack for it.
Yeah, congratulations for that.
Thank
Let's
you.
get back to your story a little bit here. We never really got to how you started your own firm, that whole transition, moving to New York. What was that like? Did that feel like starting completely all over again, or same nerves starting out? What was that
No,
like?
I think I felt extremely confident, amassing 3-4 years, all my licenses, wrapping up my CFP. Like I kind of knew I had a lot going in, the fact that I could secure a job, relatively quickly after the fallout that was my dad and I figuring out we weren't going to be working together anymore. I was super excited to get to New York City. I mean, for me, as someone who like thought it, went to New York as a kid and was like, oh my God, like this place is awesome. This was a little bit of a dream come true. I was able to really just plug into that advisor's practice and get going from day one, like building systems, making them better, writing plans, doing transactions, and just, taking in, New York City. But interestingly enough, a big part of the story here is that I got off the plane at JFK when I think Lehman Brothers collapsed. So super, super, super big part of this entire narrative is my first year and a half in New York City is 2008 and 2009.
It's amazing how many successful people nowadays have kind of that original intro stories, like everything collapsed and that was the first day, and like it kind of bred, I don't know, maybe toughness or something like that. I'm hoping COVID-19 does that for me.
It will. It literally will. There will be a lot of people, it's a big shakeout. It's a big shakeout for those who, and in a good, like if if it wasn't for you, thank God thank God the tree was shaken now, and you went on to something hopefully you really enjoy doing. And before I get into that part of the story, I think it's very important to know that it's okay to realize, like almost the sooner you realize this is not for you, the better off you're going to be. If you're playing a long game, like what a bad beat if you're in year 4 or 5 of dedicating yourself to this, and then you figure it out, that this isn't for you, versus like, okay, I spent a year really busting my butt, in the profession, and this isn't for me. I'm going to go do something else. I'm 24, I'm 25, versus 28, 29, 30. And, you're setting yourself up for big things there. In any event, the origin story of New York City is one of, it's like, I wrote about that as well. It's called The Bane of Wall Street. It was my 10-year anniversary of the recession story, which was, when Bane and Batman's like, the darkness, like I was born in the darkness, right? I was you've only adapted to it. Like I was born in the recession. Like I was born in New York City finance, sky is falling, environment. So drinking out of the fire hose by the way, just show up. I'm in some 30-something-year-old's practice. I think it was like maybe, I want to say, 30, 40, 50 million in assets, super high growth. And, the sky's falling and the phone's ringing off the hook, and they got to talk to a 24-year-old they've never met in their life before, telling them to, keep calm and stay the course, and, get a joke in there to chop up how miserable people were. I mean, this is insane, right? And you can pull up any number of 2008, 2009 stories. I'm thinking to myself, well, I just arrived. I guess I'm going home in a month or two. I mean, as confident as I was, just a second ago saying like I showed up confident in my abilities, like they were put to the test immediately. Like the PR skills that I acquired put to the test immediately. This is where all of it was paying dividends, because I was able to survive, not just survive, but help keep the practice I was working in afloat. Like that proving test, was everything that would define me as an advisor and prepare me for, what could be the worst. March got close to it. This March got really, really close to it, but boy was I ready, to handle it. Now with but this time with two, like then it was just me and a apartment in a city, and that was it. Like there, other than some student loan debt, there was nothing else there. Today, completely different story. A mortgage, a lot more student loan debt, a wife, a kids. And I'm thinking to myself for the last 10 years, what if '08 happens again? How am I going to be prepared for that? What are you going to do differently? How are you going to handle your own clients? How are you going to communicate to them? What systems are you going to put in place if people need to start buying dips and taking stabs at opportunities? What if they just start calling you all at once like they did in '08? But now you got, didn't envision a pandemic being the thing that did it and my kids would be stuck home with me. That was a whole other, layer of, oh my God, like I really need to be reliant on my systems and my time here, because there's things I can't do and can do in this particular moment. And if it's going to be '08 or worse, or its own version of that, I need to be able to handle it, because truth be told, as you just said in the beginning here, there are as bad as things can get, there's always the flip side to that. There's the opportunities that come out of it. And that's the big takeaway here, is when I saw '08 happen, I was in no position to seize any opportunities. I was just trying to make sure I didn't have to go back home to South Florida. So that meant keep this practice alive. I didn't have, and the good news was I had hardly any skin in the game beyond that. Like, like I got all this experience on my belt, these free notches of experience at the end of it. I'd probably just have a heart attack today. But yeah, that's a big difference. So anyways, that was like the first year, 2 years in New York, and we got out of that in pretty good shape, in really good shape. By 2010, the practice I was in had its best year, which is amazing. But the relationship I had with that particular advisor had soured. There's almost like a trend here. It was probably me. No, it's just there was a lot that went down over those 2 years, just from a managerial point of view between an associate and someone. And we won't get into that, but let's just say by the end of that, everyone was kind of depleted, and the hand was forced. Like it was time to move on. And that's where, and I'll take a break here, that's where I found my previous partner at Ameriprise, who had a lot of ambition, and from the jump was like, let's try and find a practice to buy and double up. I think he felt that acquiring would help him grow a lot faster than organically growing. And then, at that point, so I, by the way, got to New York, finished my CFP like in 2010, that was all wrapped up at the end of 2009. So I was one of the youngest CFPs in the country at that point, at like 25, which was super cool. And then from an educational standpoint, I think I still had it was onto GMATs. Like I figured if I was going to come all over the map here, forgive me. I'm just trying to, it's such a long story. It was on the GMAT, so I think the education component still went. I figured I would need a very strong network. One thing I realized in moving to New York City is just how like little my degree from Florida was going to carry me in a very, and no knock to Florida, it's an amazing place. I think today it's like more than outstanding of a school than when I was there, but you're competing with Harvard and Yale and Ivy League schools in Manhattan, and I just needed a more local higher end network than what I had. And I looked at NYU Stern, which had a stellar part-time MBA program, and ironically my father went there. I was always like, as a kid, like I always heard about that, and I was always impressed by that. So I started studying for my GMATs to see if I couldn't acquire myself a network. I didn't want to leave. And by the way, hedge this bet I was making on myself that I would be my own advisor in my own practice someday, or at least a partner and have equity in a firm someday. Well, if that didn't work out, I'm sure some pedigree would be very helpful in getting into some of these really nice private banks and family offices that are around, that are obviously more plentiful in New York City than anywhere else in the country. And I could just be like, hey, I have all this skill, I have a nice MBA, let's go, trust company XYZ.
So which advisors do you think should consider MBAs? I think obviously it's not necessary to be a practicing advisor, but
Yeah.
I mean, do you think it's super necessary or at least convenient for somebody who wants to manage their own practice and learn the systems stuff and build a higher network, whatever that means?
Yeah, so usually go get your MBA for 3 reasons: to move yourself vertically in your own organization, to make a lateral move out of your organization to another field or another organization, and then thirdly, to acquire a network. I'd argue that the network is the most important one of all, and professors will tell you that, or I hope they tell you that. And for me, like, I wasn't there there was nowhere vertically to go. I mean, you're responsible for that, right? You're growing your business. There's nowhere to go in the organization, especially for me, who was working for one other individual. I wasn't planning on leaving, but yeah, there was a good part, again, that hedge of, so that was there, but that wasn't the primary. And then thirdly, it was the network. That for me was exactly why I was going there, to be able to hopefully rely on the friends that I was making and the inroads I was making to their networks that, if I was going to develop business at some point in time. Now you got to figure out how to help them first, right? We'll get to that. But nonetheless, that's why I went there. And I think it was very, it was easier for me to see the return on the investment I was about to make. By the way, we're talking like $120,000 in student loans. I didn't have 120 grand on me. Mom and dad weren't helping me out. Literally had to go borrow yet again, on top of my then almost wife's, were we married at that point? No, we got married in business school. Then wife's $250,000 in student loans from her law school education. I mean, this is starting to get into crazy amounts of debt. She's the cautionary tale. I'm the one of like, all right, how much business do we need to develop over this 3-year program to break even on this? Right? Can we do that? Is that feasible over 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? How are we going to get there? Yeah, I did the math, and it just seemed very, if I was really, with all the experience I had at that point, it seemed very doable, right? If not, I'd be stupid not to. And that's a bold proclamation to make. But I think for most people, it's very geographic centered. If you're going to blow 80 grand on an MBA and you can't figure out how it's going to ultimately get clients in the door, for me, it was all right, 120 grand, that's $600-$800 a month, in a student loan payment. Let's back that into how many financial plans, how much in assets under management, like, is that going to happen? Is that going to work? And what's the value of that network? I think you have to analyze it like that. And I would tell you that I think for most advisors, you don't need an MBA. It really depends on what kind of advisor you want to be. And you can learn you can even learn how to run a practice without an MBA. But it does help when you're advising other clients' businesses, right? So if you're going to do small business planning, like, that's a nice thing to have there to help them out. And you can draw upon the education knowledge that you've experienced. And by the way, you've been growing your own business too, so you can draw on actual practical experience.
So what was the culture like, as far as making connections within your MBA program? Like, were people pretty open, wanting to connect? Like, were the people there because they wanted to expand their network, or is that something you had to really take on yourself to make a point of making those connections?
So I did nighttime program, so 3 hours, 3 days a week, and then in the winter breaks and summer breaks, you were there like 5. Those were the intensives. You're there every day for like 9 hours. That's a marathon. But I think what I liked about this program is everyone, unlike the full-time program where very traditional pathway into like banking or private equity or consulting, and you got your summer associateship after your first year, like, none of that was what we were doing. Like, we were leaving our full-time jobs, at 5, 6 o'clock, or to get to class by 6 o'clock. Everyone in that room was hustling. Everyone already respected each other, like, for how hard, for the work that we were burning midnight. We always joked, we kept the lights on, and I think everyone had that kind of mutual respect for one another. We took our our opportunities to go drink after class. Seriously, like, especially in that first year, everyone really wanted to make an active effort to make friends and network and kind of share in this experience that we were having, that I thought was a little bit more unique than what I saw out of the full-time kids. We all lived in the city. I mean, there were some really fun and crazy nights too. So, I mean, you got great memories, great friends, but I took it a step further. I tested the water by figuring out, all right, what can I offer? So I had this moment about halfway through business school. One of the things that was going on in the back of my mind, and I went there to try and solve, was how was I actually going to grow a financial advisory practice? Like, I couldn't shake this feeling of what I had struggled with basically for, I guess I can do the years here. So I'm 7-8 years in now. Like, we're getting close to a decade of being a financial advisor. I still had to solve this problem, and no one can see me do the quotes there, this problem of how I was really going to grow long term when everyone's telling me go get baby boomer, clients, pre-retirees and retirees. And that just never made sense to me as someone who, knew enough about marketing and PR. Like, I didn't get it. Like, really? I'm still 20 something. You want me to go, show me the bar in Manhattan that has only 60 and 70-year-olds that wants, a 20-something-year-old to talk to them about, how to plan their entire financial life.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
right. Yeah.
It just wasn't adding up. So the light bulb went off at some point in time as I was looking around the room during a break, and there it was everyone around me. And again, knowing that it was and that's where the whole like long-term, that's where like it really started to, develop in my head, that we're going to play a long game. And I think I thought I think I had something good, like, and the only way to test this out is to do it. I'm going to invest in everyone in that classroom. Let's do free seminars. Let's really go all in and brand around this. That's when the word millennial showed up on the map for the first time, and that was us. And I'm like, all right, young professionals, hardworking millennials. We got, everyone here is kind of trying to do the same thing. That was it. Boom. And I was like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to market around this. I couldn't think of any advisors at the time going out there, into the media. And I was like, all right, let's get this messaging out there. Like, that was unique. You got laughed at in 2013 if you said you were going to work only with millennials, if they even knew what the term was.
Yeah.
There's no money in that. They have no assets. You're out of your mind. I'm like, but we have financial planning, and you can collect a fee for planning. We're not going to wait around on that. Like, but they're all going to be, execs and doctors and lawyers and, white collar professionals. Like, that seems such short-sighted to me that you would not want someone young like me who has access to them,
right,
not to go develop that. Right. Like, fortunately for me, I was, helping manage another advisor's practice and was able to get older clients, mainly from growing up in South Florida and being particularly good at it.
Yeah.
I just didn't love it, but that's where
wow, that probably gave you a really unique ability to talk to older people.
Yeah, I'm everyone. I'm literally everyone's grandson. Give me a deli at the 5 o'clock hour, and I am literally reliving, World War II battles with people, with your grandparents. That's more or less a true story. Anyways, that's where the epiphany went off, halfway through business school, that's what we're going to do. And the branding of, Douglas Boneparth, New York City's financial advisor for millennials, like, that's a mouthful, but that is literally the branding I did. I didn't even know that was winning me keywords and keyword searching. Like, I had picked something unbeknownst to me that was doing well over on the Google search engine side. I just knew I had to create a website for that. I had to get a blog up. I got to pitch media outlets, get quotes, get press. I can do that. Social media helps in connecting to journalists. And I just ran with that. And I tried to go from, 6 headlines to now it's well over 500 various clips, videos, podcasts, TV appearances. I tried to make it as nonstop as humanly possible when it came to positioning myself as a voice for millennials and personal finance.
Okay. So how did you transition into that full send millennial, basically? Like, how did you do that? How did you analyze it? Is it just all interacting with peers? Is that how you came up with your kind of criteria? I've read your Millennial Money Fix book. It's very good. It's taught me a little bit about money. Yeah. So how did you create that? How did you create that criteria, and how did you analyze, a generation that's kind of up and coming?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Again, it was staring me right in the face. It
Yeah.
was right in front of me. And if you read the book, which you said, which you did, thank you for that. It really was born out of the recession. You got to look for the story that you're trying to tell. I mean, the stories are what sell, right?
Right.
And watching my wife come out of 2008 and 9, the other half of this whole equation is watching her take on $250,000 in student loan debt to be denied what she thought would be available to her because of the Great Recession, to become a bag holder of student loan debt as opposed to go get that big lawyer job that even if you hated law, you could pay back that debt pretty quickly. She was now in a pretty precarious financial position along with all of her super smart friends who decided to make that same bet on themselves, and she was not supported financially for doing that. She just couldn't walk away from her debt, and mom and dad weren't paying for that either. So seeing that happen and seeing that happen across the board to us, basically older millennials, was really defining for me. It was jarring. It was how we wanted to address how this happened, which is how we start the book out. How did we get here? Where did this promise go astray? Why weren't we financially educated to think a little bit more independently about these multi six-figure decisions you're making at 20? Like, seriously? I was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, here's a $300,000 decision you need to make. You're 20. Wait, you're 2022 and you were never given a single lesson in personal finance.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
That's probably not going to go well.
So since I brought up the book, and I've done my research on you, I've read a lot of your stuff. There's a couple things that I've heard. I think maybe a couple months ago you were on a podcast, and you're talking about kind of some new things to be aware of with COVID. And one of the things you brought up was the rainy day fund of 3 to 6 months being maybe insufficient. Does this ring a bell?
Yeah. No, it
what's kind of
touches
your
on
take on
good point.
things people should be concerned about now, stuff that's changing right now with the older millennials, or sorry, the younger millennials. And I think I'm the first Gen Zer, actually. I think I'm the first iteration of Gen Zer coming through. So
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So what are some things we should be looking out for? What are some new things that, is maybe old hat that we need to throw out?
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're touching on here. I've been pretty long on this idea that, there's the old hat thinking is like, get as much money put away, into the retirement plans and long-term investment vehicles. You can hear like your mom or grandma in the back of your mind, like, are you putting any money in your retirement plan? Or, like, I hope you're saving your money. And it's just like, so specifically in the context of like, retirement accounts and things where your money is literally locked up and, without penalty or taxation. Watching, my peers, go into a depleted job market, saddled with student loan debt. The one thing that stood out was, oh my God, like, cash would go a really long way here. Like, having liquidity would offer on a crazy amount of security at a time in your life that's already inundated with insecurity. Now the recession, and that stigma has stuck with me throughout my entire career. Of, I don't think 3 to 6 months of your living expenses is sufficient. Be bold enough to say 6 to 12, really 9 to 12, like a full year. So my own personal goal, even in my household, was, let's get a year of cash, because of what my wife and I had experienced, in our formidable year, in our, beginning years of starting our adult lives. And it's this notion that, almost like we're the fear of missing out, of compounding, right?
Yeah.
Like, the fear of missing out, that you're destroying your ability to retire because you didn't at least get the amount. I mean, yeah, try and get the free money if you can, but even if you're sacrificing compounding and free money, in your 401k match, or you're missing out on market returns, like anyone who just got started, investing in March till now. It's like, I'm the greatest investor alive. It's like, and
Yeah.
if you didn't invest, your friends who did, who have their Robinhood accounts, have been reminding you of it every single day. Just missed out on Bitcoin and all of that. I'm a big fan of it. You're led to feel, whether it's through your peers or through your parents, that you're missing out on something. And the reality is that you're not. I would make sure that I am secure and feel good so that I can then go take those risks, right? The goal isn't to invest, it's to stay invested. What good is putting your money in the market if you're just going to have to take it out to deal with something that pops up? And I don't think there's any shame in giving yourself a sense of security first before dealing with other long-term goals that you might have, especially when you're starting out. You will feel invincible in your 20s if you racked up, 6 to 12 months of your living expenses in cash. Then go take, those bigger risks that everyone tells you should take. I'm all for it. I'm all for taking those risks and opportunity, but not ahead of really feeling secure and sleeping well at night. I think you'll be that much better at taking those risks and sticking with the decisions that you made, specifically because you've given yourself that kind of security with liquidity.
Yeah. So another point in your book that I really liked, and I think will continue to prove to be more true over time, is kind of the financial goal of retirement being like this, like North Star financial goal where everybody wants to retire and chill until they move on, right? And it's kind of shifted to financial independence. Wondering if you could touch down a little bit on that concept and, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think I made the joke the other day, like, I'm never going to retire like my grandparents in Boca and just eat and play golf and play with the grandkids. And like after 7-8 months, however many months of COVID and being at home with kids, I'm just like, all I want to do is move to Boca and eat and do nothing on a golf course and play with my kids and grandkids. But as much as I was joking about that, I really don't think our generation, even your generation, is finding all of these ways to, to be productive and find our purpose and work really hard. I don't think we're doing all of this just to do nothing at the end of it. I whether it's because we ultimately can't afford to and we'll have to work as well because we might see changes to entitlements like Social Security, or it's just that much more difficult to save, which it is from a relative perspective, harder to save, due to cost of living, especially on the big expenses like transportation and housing, not on the LCD TVs apparently, but obviously education, you see where inflation really has hit, and also wage growth. So yeah, it's a harder environment out there for us and you, respectively, but we're not doing this just to sit by a golf course. I would think that we more than likely would like to find something that continues our purpose and continues to make us feel fulfilled, alongside of not having to work as much, right? Or just be able to continue to work because you love to do it in a perfect world. Like that to me seems more of financial independence, having choice, right? Having the ability to decide what it is you're going to be spending your time on, regardless of its financial function in your life. That's financial independence. So we're a pretty creative and dynamic generation, both Gen Z and millennials, and pretty much born with technology in our hands. So that allows us to do that. I think it's silly to think we'll be chasing the same fade grandma and grandpa had. Grandpa fought in World War II, like front lines. He's a war hero. He crushed it. That guy deserves to sit in a deli eating his face off and have his grandkids at the pool and take us to a science museum, and that's the retirement. Like he's done enough. He doesn't need to find any more purpose.
So I'll kind of wrap it up here and ask the final question, unless you have anything else you want to add after this. What actions should the leading Gen Zers be taking on? Like, what would the Gen Z Douglas be doing at this point? If you knew everything you knew now, what would you be doing if you could you started over, you're 22 and you've learned all the lessons that you've learned?
I would have a TikTok account, and I would be your foremost financial, TikTok superstar. I'm kind of half kidding. And people are listening like, ew, old guy. I'm kind of not. Like, I think I personally feel like I missed the boat on that. Like, I'm too old to go down that road. I'm very jealous of it. Like, if I went on it, no one's gonna watch this. Like, I live on Twitter and Instagram like a good older millennial should. But in all seriousness, I don't think there's something new or novel that I could offer anyone of any generation, regardless of how young they are. It's a lot of the classic advice you would receive, about just thinking with the end in mind. Like, you pick up a classic like Think and Grow Rich, and a lot of these Napoleon Hill quotes, and you're going to find just like the original self-help book. Whether you want to get that through your Gary V's of the world or your Simon Sinek's, or going back old school to Napoleon Hill. You got to think with the end in mind, understand what the goal is. My advice, so here, I'll boil right down to it. Think about what you truly love to do and what gets you excited. This isn't new, but if no one gave you the confidence or encouragement to put on your blinders and tune out mom and dad and your friends and anyone putting pressure on you to do something that's truly not authentic to you, right? Then you got to be pretty brave to do that, right? Especially when mom and dad have been footing the bill for like 18 to 22 years. Got news for you. It's not their life. It's your life. It's your happiness. I got in some ways very lucky by being pulled by my father into something that I ultimately enjoy, right? I am built for this, and because of all of these things, it really meshed well with me, and I was able to take the ball and run with it and apply my own version of what I thought financial planning is, and get very creative with it and do things that I love to do in it, right? If again, if this is a long game, and the sooner you can figure out for yourself what you really love to do, the sooner you'll find your own way to happiness in your career and life. So obviously everyone tuning in here is to explore this, career in personal finance, or has an interest in it. But I just want you to critically think about what you want for yourself. And people spend their entire lives asking that question and never come up with an answer. So get going.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Douglas. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Justin, all the best to you. And, people can find me out there on the internet and Twitter at Doug Boneparth for a good laugh. I'm sure you know.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Vincent Pacillo, producer of the MSUwma podcast, where we are inspiring and educating the next generation of financial planners. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please check out our channel on all platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and check out our social media at MSUwma and msuwma.com.